In January 2022, I began a fieldwork study guiding 3 other Korean adoptees through the Tamalpa Institute Life art process, an expressive arts approach for transformation that includes movement and dance, art making, writing, and performance-based ritual. The study includes 6 months of one-to-one coaching and monthly group workshops exploring the themes of solidarity, empowerment, connection, and whole self-expression to provide each participant with tools to integrate their personal stories, identity politics, soul metaphors, and psychological material while including myself as artist, researcher, and teacher in relationship with the other participants and to my own life art process. Throughout the study, I discovered the personal metaphors and psychological process of each participant mirrored my own experiences in the healing arts in significant ways. I will share the arts-based research method of Tography to express my findings in this Tamalpa Institute study, using a process-oriented, creative, and dialogical way that really honors the interrelationships between the participants, myself, and each of the multimodal arts practices. I am passionate about trauma healing and restoring connection to ancestral roots and wisdom for a fuller sense of self and creative expression. I am a woman. I am a lesbian. I am a millennial. I am Asian American. And I am a Korean adoptee who spent the first 31 years of my life feeling fragmented and broken, abandoned, rejected, yearning for love and for belonging, and searching for it in romantic entanglements with older women who mirrored back the original wounding of my adoption. As a transnational Korean adoptee who grew up without any genetic mirrors, I decided to create them for myself using metaphors, objects, and symbols as a way of understanding myself, the world, and my place within it. Because I felt rootless for much of my life, it was difficult for me to feel tethered to the messiness in myself and in the world. To find grounding, I had to restore the connection to my heart, my body, and the environment that had been severed at birth. Encountering a sacred wholeness in everyday objects used to symbolize core facets of the self and coming home to my body helped me awaken to my true purpose in life, to serve as a guide and a healing mirror for others. Conscious dance, writing, soul work, and trauma healing through embodied expressive arts have allowed me to dialogue, embody, learn, transform, and come back to feeling like a whole person again, with all of my multifaceted layers of identity. Yet, even with all of the self-work and the resources I have cultivated within myself over the past 6 years, I was triggered by the pandemic violence towards the Asian and Pacific Islander communities, especially the Korean women in the Atlanta shooting. Or I should say, it triggered an anger inside of me I haven't felt called to express in several years. Growing up in a small town of 6,000 people in West Michigan, I became accustomed to being stared at because people had simply not seen an Asian person before. My mother is well known in the Michigan political scene, and my father was the town mayor and community banker of the town I was raised in. So I didn't face a lot of overt racism until I went away to college and left their protection. By then, I felt like the entire identity I had created and believed about myself was shattered. I spent the majority of my 20s involved in Asian American activism on my small private liberal arts college campus. And 3 years after I graduated, they did decide to implement the ethnic studies program I had created a coalition for and wrote the original proposal plan. My undergraduate thesis was called Creating History in Spaces, the Making of an Asian American Woman in Zuihitsu. And 13 years later, I felt called again to create history and spaces and to remake this Asian American woman. This time with a more embodied and whole self-expression, as well as a focus on the personal and social transformation, using the arts-based practices and the trainings that I've done as a scholar practitioner. Living my inquiry as an arts-based research scholar practitioner inspired me to start my own expressive arts coaching business called Dialogical Persona Healing Arts in February 2020, right before the global COVID-19 pandemic began. As a practitioner, I help those who are ready for transformation explore and integrate deep psychological material in their soul inquiries so they can have more peace and confidence and purpose in body, heart, mind, and spirit. My experiences as a Korean adoptee without knowledge of my own roots and history gives me a unique perspective and lifelong relationship to transformative inquiry. And my creative, highly independent nature allows me to hold space for what might seem unconventional and surprising to others. The rise in anti-Asian sentiments during the pandemic surprised me, and I felt ready to integrate even more of my experiences, my background in cultural studies and Asian American activism and adoptee politics, with the multimodal arts practices, transformation, and healing found in the Tamalpa Institute Life art process I have been training in since October of 2019. I wanted to work with other Korean adoptees and really come to an expression of our many varied identities and experiences that would be inclusive and representative of the transnational adoption community itself, which includes Korean adoptees, or CADs, which is a term and political identification that really centers the adoptee's own experiences. Korean adopted, the term social workers, adoptive parents, and people within the situation of their adoption will use, and Korean displaced persons, which is a term for those who do not feel at home in the United States or in Korea, and they don't feel they really have any place that they can belong to. That's why they're displaced. My intention was to open up space for transformative healing at the individual and the interpersonal levels using the life art process. Could the life art process bring about the transformation, integration, and whole self-expression that is needed in the Korean adoption community, where identities can be so fractured and split? Thank you, house that held my Tamalpa training experiences and so many dances. I honor you. All the fire and the flowers. I learned to dance again in this house. In closing the individual sessions during the last week of June, I noticed the integration from the final workshop is continuing in different ways for each of us. Jasmine began our session feeling disconnected with a lot of fear and anxiety about a new dating possibility who is exactly what she has been manifesting. But she does not want to lose her independence. She felt in a vulnerable space and wanted to reground in herself and stay true to what her needs are. In drawing with big strokes and etching things out, she felt herself releasing control, exhaling, grounding. By putting her thoughts on the paper, she got back to her normal state instead of being hyper-aware. She realized that carving out space and time for herself to just draw and create had been missing the previous weekend at Pride, and that was why she felt so disconnected from herself. Whereas Lily had a vision of herself stepping out of her belly and womb, walking out of herself. In an effort to reclaim her identity, it was like she was pulling off a cape. In moving from her core, she noticed her breath get stuck in her belly. As she moved with it, she saw a beanstalk, and out of it, branches and flowers began to grow until it became like a tree where birds were building nests, hatching new eggs, and sprouting into the sky. And then she grew up. An ugly witch popped out of the tree and revealed herself as her anger and rage. She wanted to be seen and acknowledged. Lily was able to look at her, see her wrinkles, how old she is, and how she wants to be free. She invited her to dance, and the witch smiled and transformed into a fairy princess as they danced together. Then little kids popped out like in Peter Pan. The words, "I want to heal. I'm ready to heal," came out, and she felt like it was more real than in the past when she has said that. Her little girl is ready to heal, but the adult Lily is uncertain if she can commit. She is afraid of what that looks like, battling what it looks like, a fear of change and the unknown, and what's on the other side. As she hugged her little girl, she felt a lightness and her shoulders dropped. In drawing what it looks like, she drew wavy lines and an image came to her of a field of flowers, the cat, and bricks. Everything coming back from all of our earlier sessions, including the cape she shed before dancing on the cliff with ribbons. It was revealing herself again, like a butterfly coming out of chrysalis, coming out of the womb, or cocoon and flying. For me, I am still wearing my new Kim and Ono contemporary kimono with peacock feathers on it, black but full of vibrant colors. It is my queen robe. I no longer feel like a princess, but a fully mature queen who is in her power, in her prime, and ready to celebrate it all. I am speaking up and speaking out again, claiming the life I have wanted to be living since I was in my early 20s, by presenting at conferences, giving talks on creativity and business, and holding in-person retreats this July. I am forming new relationships and genuinely trying to reveal more of my own personal experiences and stories, informing these ties, rather than just ideas, art concepts, theories, and teachings, in order to find true intimacy and connection. I am at long last living my life in the present instead of envisioning it or living for or towards it. I am here in color, bold, loud, peacock-like, and even still, reaching out. Did the life art process bring about the transformation, integration, and whole self-expression that is needed in the Korean adoption community, where identities can be so fractured and split? In its deeper philosophical implications, creativity is a quest for meaning. It is an attempt to penetrate the mystery of the self and perhaps the even greater mystery of being. As an emergent study and one that is still in process, I see and hear the fulfillment of growth, learning, transformation, and integration from each of the participants. I feel a lightness in my whole being that is part of my reaching out now, no longer reaching out of longing, instead reaching out, inviting others to come in with my right hand, and offering my gifts out with the other. I imagine creativity as an inquiry into the deepest parts of the self will also reach out into the world, extending a more creative and embodied future to those who are ready for their own soul's expressions.